All right. Hello and welcome to the Sac Off podcast. We are back once again to talk about the Sacramento Kings and what a week it was for the Kings. They had 5 games on the schedule between our last episode, so there's plenty to talk about there. Plenty to talk about in Kings news and the upcoming schedule. So first, we'll start off with the 5 games that took place. Of course, some of them without Boogie. So Oscar, starting out with you. Where do you want to start with the first games that you saw?
I guess we'll start with Memphis. So I guess this is probably the most disappointing performance just because of the way in which Memphis look now. They don't look that good. And so I guess that is kind of a concern. I think this was the last game Ben McLemore started, and Kufos, Willie Cauley-Stein also started. Willie played a ton of minutes, I think 34 in the end, partly because it was just a blowout pretty much. From the second half onwards, there was kind of I think it was around the first quarter, they had a lead and looked kind of okay, and it's kind of been a recurring theme has been the end of the second half kind of just not executing that well and having, I think there was like a 6-point swing the last 2 minutes of the second half, the end of the second quarter, and so then you're just kind of playing from behind that way. And it never really got. I think that was the closest it got, was kind of after the first minute of the third quarter. It never really got any closer. So that was kind of disappointing. I think that was probably Rondo's worst game. He only had like 5 points. He just wasn't really attacking the basket much, or hitting his jumper. I think he's been since the Lakers and the second Clippers game, he hasn't really been attacking the basket at the same amount, or at least to score. He's been getting to the basket and then passing it off. And this Memphis game, he wasn't really even getting to the basket. So that was kind of disappointing. So yeah, it was just a pretty bad game. I guess there wasn't. I guess you would say like the biggest disappointment was McLemore like probably had his worst game, and that led to him being sat, or at least not starting. And I think that has caused more issues, just the kind of constant bench turnaround. And this was kind of one of the game where, maybe because it got out of hand so quickly, there wasn't as much rotation by Carl. So it'll be interesting. So maybe that's why he started tinkering more. It just seems like every 2 minutes someone's coming in and out of the lineup. Especially the next game, the Suns game, it really felt like that. Should we move on to the Suns game, or do you have anything to touch on the Grizzly game? It feels so long ago now. It's kind of hard to recall like particular things that were of concern. But I mean, Marc Gasol didn't even play the second half, and like Brandon Wright just went off. He had a really good game, and that was kind of like, he was maybe a matchup you wanted Willie Cauley-Stein on, and he was this. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. He played like I guess like just looking at the game flow charts, they played pretty much the same time. But yeah, I think Kufos was mainly guarding Brandon Wright, and then Willie Cauley-Stein was on Zebo, who also had a really good game. I feel like all his mid-range jumpers were just going in. So it was like another game where a power forward hitting their jumpers kind of killed them, like the first Clippers game.
Yeah. So I think, and you mentioned, I mean, one thing we'll talk about this later is Willie Cauley-Stein is part of the rotation, and that's it's frustrating.
But yeah, he played a lot in this game, almost had another double-double. I think it was like 1 point away and like a couple of boards away from a double. Yeah, I think he had the boards, I just don't think he had the points. So, I mean, yeah, he's been really impressive, but I don't think he's really played enough going like as we move into the next games, he's kind of been. I think if we move to the Suns game, he played 16 minutes that game, and whether it's, I think it was a back-to-back, so then maybe, but then it's like the game was blown out. Why are you playing him 34 minutes in the blowout if then that's going to impact the amount you play him the next game? He did start. This was the game that they started with the Rondo, Collison, Anderson, Gay at the 4, Willie Cauley-Stein starting, which was awful starting lineup. Just not enough offense out there, especially like the way Gay's playing. I think he scored 9 points. And then you have Anderson, who didn't hit. He went 1 for 8 the first half, so he wasn't hitting any shots. And then you have Rondo, who obviously is limited offensively, and you have Willie Cauley-Stein that needs Rondo getting to the basket, and then Collison. So I think like that unit was really rough to start the game. It got a bit better once Kufos came in for Willie Cauley-Stein, and that's just, I think, Kufos and because Bellinelli came in as well, so you just have like more shooting, and I think Kufos plays better when there's shooting around and just more ball handling, and also just not playing against the best front court. So when he starts, like once we get into the next game, he really struggled that starting half, just finishing through contact in particular. So I think that's something we kind of have to watch if Kufos keeps starting. He's kind of struggled against starting units, although he's probably been the Kings' third best player, I'd say, so far this season, behind Collison and Boogie. And considering they've both missed games, I think that's kind of talks to some of the quality of play. At least like they've been the most consistent. And so Collison had a good game. That there wasn't really much else in that one. McLemore ended up playing like 15 minutes. He actually shot like a couple of pretty good threes. James Anderson had that one spell where he hit 3 threes in a row, and that kind of got the game. They got tied, and this has been another thing the Kings have done quite often. They've got back up, tied the lead, and then given up like a 10-point run. And that's kind of a symptom of just playing behind, having to expend so much energy to catch up. Then you kind of like take a deep breath once you catch up, and then you get hit quickly on a run, and you can't deal with it. So that's been kind of a recurring theme. We even saw it in the Spurs game last night. So that's kind of disappointing. Was there anything from the Phoenix game? And that one got out of hand as well. I think it was like halfway through the third quarter, after they caught up, then it just went downhill from there and never really got close. But
no, one thing you mentioned, I think this adds to the frustration that people are having, but with how the team's performing right now. But I mean, with 7 minutes in the third quarter, it was 55-58. Close game. I mean, this was even without Boogie, and then it just went downhill to where it's 57-71 with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. So that
part of the reason why it got to that score is James Anderson hit 3 threes. So I mean, that's not like that's not going to happen often as well. So it wasn't like it wasn't offense that you could live off. So maybe that's kind of a problem as well, where it's like unsustainable catching up. It's
and just for mentioning with the lineup about the lack of offense, and some of this is injury, especially with Collison being out. But what's being trotted out there with, you had Rondo, Anderson, Gay, who is playing horribly, some of the worst basketball we've seen in a while from him. Willie Cauley-Stein. It's just, where are you getting the shooting from?
And yeah, I think it's Willie Cauley-Stein and Rondo I really like as a pairing. I think you should try and pair them the most, just because when Rondo does get to the basket, he can just like throw it up and Willie can chuck it down. And then I think Kufos and the shooters, Bellinelli and Collison, work really well as a pairing, like setting screens on the outside. So I would like some stability. I think that's been kind of, and we'll get on to kind of like some of the disgruntlement. I think that could be one part of it, is just like so little continuity. It gets quite frustrating. Even if you look at the game flow charts, it's just like compare the game flow charts from Sacramento. So use popcornmachine.net, and they have game flow charts of each team. So they show kind of the plus minus of each combination of players and when they're on the floor. And like the Suns have these like tight blocks of like when people play. Obviously the starters weren't in at the end of the game, but just the Kings is so fragmented and just like a mess after that first bench. Once you get into the second quarter, it's just people coming in and out all over the place, and doesn't look like there's any structure to what they're doing. So that's been kind of, I think, a frustrating thing. And just the fact that I think once Boogie was out, there'd been a different starting lineup every night. And so it just feels like Carl is being really reactionary instead of, which can be a good thing. And I think when we talk about the Golden State Warriors game, I think they reacted well to that threat and schemed well. But there's game planning, and then there's like just searching for something in vain and just throwing things together. And kind of, that I think Carl maybe learned his mistake from the Houston game. Shall we move on to that, or do you have anything from the Suns game that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we touched on it, so moving on to Houston.
So the Houston game, I think this was an awful coaching job. The starting lineup was Rondo, Bellinelli, Anderson, Gay, Kufos. They were minus 15 for the first half of the first quarter, and then the bench like lit it up, got a lead. They lost that lead somewhat once a couple of the starters came back in, but they looked at least competitive, that starting unit. Again, the end of the second quarter, they gave up, I think it was like a 3-pointer to someone in the corner. I can't recall who, maybe it was Trevor Ariza or someone. But then Carl came out with the same lineup that were minus 15 the first half to start the second half. And it didn't work again. And I just don't understand the logic in that at all. And then 3 of those starters never saw the court again. Anderson, Bellinelli, Rondo, they never played again because the bench unit came back on, closed back that 19-point deficit that the starters has built back up, but then they just didn't have enough in them and were completely gassed. But it's like, if you had started that bench, or like they could have just started that bench unit in the beginning of the second half, and you're not going from like what I think it was maybe like a 9-point hole to a 19-point hole in the first half of the third quarter. And it was like a really slow to change. And yeah, I just thought that was like a real bad lack of awareness. So that was really disappointing. And even you can even like point to changing that bench unit so much, and mismatching the second part of the second quarter is the reason why they kind of got up to like a 9-point deficit before like the bench lost another 8. I think it was when Gay came in to spell the bench unit. They were minus 9, that unit on the field, and that was for about 2 minutes. The rest of the units from when Gay went out were at worst minus 2. So like Gay was a huge minus on that game. I think he was minus 23 at the end of the game. So that's just, and like Kufos was minus 32. So it's just like, you have to like react to people not playing like badly quicker. And I just think it's interesting, like Ben McLemore had a really good game that game. But it's like, I don't think Carl would drop Gay from the starting lineup, but he's happy to do it with Ben. And is just like a lack of, and like the way in which Willie Cauley-Stein, like this game he only got 22 minutes and he played really well. It's like he should play. Is if it just feels like there's certain players that Carl wants to have, like he needs to see them earn it, but then players that have earned it are no longer culpable. That's just kind of the sense I've got. Because like, there's no way Gay should have played 25 minutes that game the way he was playing. There's no way Kufo should be playing 25 minutes the way he was playing that game. Yet they played more than Macklemore, Willie Cauley-Stein, who were playing better. So that's just like, to me, that's really frustrating kind of mindset. What was your takeaway from the Houston game after that rant? Because I was just really pissed off after that game. I thought it was pretty awful.
I mean, one of the most ironic things to me is that pretty much with these starting lineups, he's throwing out things, seeing what sticks. He doesn't have, I guess he doesn't really have a plan with just trying to find something that works. In that Houston game, he found something that worked, that was able to compete and bring the team back with Willie Cauley-Stein, Caspi, and he went away from it in the second half. I don't know what
credit
you're
to
reading
him
about coaching that tells you that you do that, but if you're trying to find something and it works, and that's what you've been looking for, and then you decide, you know what, I'm going to go back to the thing that wasn't working. I don't get that at all.
Yeah. I mean, at least he kept with most of the bench to end the game. But that's partly because he couldn't take them off because they were playing so well. But then he did, like, Ben McLemore didn't play again, and Gay played instead of him the last like 8 or so minutes. And I'm not saying that they would have won if Ben was on the court, but I mean, Gay wasn't helping. Yeah, like
for him, do you think it's? I mean, we mentioned two of the things that he has no problem keeping Kufos in there. He has no problem keeping what was it? He's playing James Anderson, but he's McLemore and Cauley-Stein are staying on the bench more. Do you think it really is just a young thing? He's going with one of those veteran guys.
I think so. I mean, that's kind of the trend. Even like Seth Curry not playing a huge amount. I know he's been injured the next 2 games we're about to talk about. But yeah, I think there has been a leaning towards older players. And I mean, James Anderson starting, I don't think he's ever played more minutes than Ben McLemore. So it's just like, and I think the last game, like James Anderson started and then never saw the court again. So it's like, I understand kind of wanting someone to like start 2 periods, like the beginning of the game and the beginning of the second half game, to have kind of like a continuity of how you want lineups to like come out. But then if you're starting someone and they can, I mean, James Anderson had like a couple of bad plays where he was out of position, lost on a rotation, kind of threw the ball away after a drive. But if that's enough for you to never play that player again, why are you starting them? Why are you putting them in such a prominent role? So that's just kind of like frustrating as well. If you're going to make a change and start someone, like have some like strong belief in it and think, okay, well, we're going to start James Anderson, but we're going to do it for the next 15 games and see how it goes. Not like, oh, we're going to start James Anderson, but if he like messes up a couple of times, he won't start the second half. It's just, that's kind of like, it's just really wishy-washy, and it just doesn't seem like very deliberate decisions. I mean, and like this game kind of like James Harden just took over, and I guess maybe one of the reasons why the starters, the bench played so well was because the Houston bench didn't play that great. So maybe they took advantage of like a weaker unit. Capella had a really good first half. Kufos couldn't do anything against him, and that's like another thing where it's like, to me, that's bad scouting. Like Capella's like athletic, big. Like maybe play your athletic big on him. But yeah, Harden just went off, and they keep doing the helping one pass away on the perimeter and giving up open threes. And when your offense is, okay, we want to get open threes, I always find it amusing that then defensively they're willing to give up open corner threes. And so a couple of those kill the Kings as well.
Yeah, those were in my nightmares, so I appreciate you bringing those back up.
But yeah, it's like, I mean, Harden just hit some shots, and then I guess like you have some nights where it seems the Kings have a lot of nights where teams hit all their shots. But yeah, that was kind of like one of those spectacular performances. Have you got any more thoughts on the Houston game?
Not just a lot of frustration.
I mean, I guess the good thing is it's like that bench unit looked really good. Of like
Yeah,
Caspi,
on that really
Collison,
quickly. Just
Willie
when
Cauley-Stein.
Darren Collison returns, and the fact that I
Yeah.
think we've talked about with Kufos working with Marco. I mean, we've seen seen Kings against some teams with who have considered to have great benches. The Kings bench, as expect, is so much fun. Collison, Marco, who's heating up, Kufos, and Caspi too. It's exciting.
And I mean, even if you want to play Ben with a bench, and like, because then you have like everyone's a shooter. Like Caspi has the second best percentage of 3-point shooters with over 15 attempts. So you can have like a lineup of Collison, Marco, Ben McLemore, Caspi, and Kufos. That's like, I think that's a really fun lineup. So I don't mind playing Ben McLemore off the bench, but like at least play him and like give him a role and like some continuity, and maybe that role works for him because like Collison is, whenever he's got space in that mid range or an open three, he's shooting. Marco, every time he gets the ball, he's pump faking, and then I mean, coming off screens, he was better last night. Actually, just shooting and not pump faking. It felt like just every time he would get the ball on the perimeter, he pump fakes and then tries to drive. So I'd like to see Marco shoot, but like he has a green light, he's still shooting all the time. Caspi shoots when he's open, even when it's like 10 foot behind the arc, and he's making them. So maybe like being on a unit where everyone's got like a green light to shoot, maybe that opens up McLemore to be like, well, if everyone else is shooting, I can as well. Whereas if he's on with Gay and Boogie, and they want their touches and their contested shots, maybe that's like a bit harder for him to stamp his authority on the game. So maybe that could like loosen him up. And he has been kind of, I think he's been more aggressive since being benched. So there has been like some positives to it, but it's just like not in a steady role, I guess would be the frustrating part. But yeah. So I guess like at least the recurring theme is there's always like at least one or two positives from all these games. There's always like someone playing well. That like last year there were times where just no one was playing well and it was awful. So I guess that's kind of good. I'd say I'd like to see like Rudy Gay spot up shooting more, like he was in preseason where he was just shooting loads of threes. He just seems to be driving without purpose, and people keep saying he's not suited for the dribble drive offense. Like to me, that's not dribble drive. He's just driving to the basket. Dribble drive, you're meant to drive to the basket. If there's bodies in the way, you either drop it off to the weak side big or you kick it out to the perimeter once you get to the free throw line and you see there's bodies in front. Whereas Rudy's just diving into bodies. So to me, that's not dribble drive offense. That's just driving to the basket, and is the same as isolation. So I think there's kind of like some miscommunication and people like blaming offense on Rudy Gay, where it's just like Rudy think he can make these shots where they're a lower percentage than he may want to say they are. Whereas him shooting from the perimeter is like a really good shot. Or should we move on to anything else or should we move on to Golden State Warriors, which is kind of like the opposite of the Houston game?
I think we covered everything with the Houston game, so on to Golden State.
So I guess this was interesting because like the media was like really down on the fact that the Warriors just weren't hitting open shot, like weren't hitting threes that they normally do, which I think is fair. Like you're normally not going to see Steph Curry like miss so many shots, but I thought the defensive plan of double teaming him, trapping him, was really good. And I think this was Rondo's best game, just his energy. He almost had to play the whole game because this was obviously the first one Collison was out, so that was kind of a big blow. I think if Collison had played this game, that would have helped a lot, even if Steph Curry had played this game after the Houston game where he hit some big shots late in the second half. That would have kind of helped and this is the same with the Spurs game, just not having a second ball handler that can spell Rondo for a couple of minutes. I think this was the one game where they did take him out for, I think it was 4 minutes they took him out, and I think if you put those 4 minutes together, the Kings were -9. So that's really bad. So they kind of needed some ball handling then, and Marco couldn't really do it. I thought he might be able to, but yeah, he just couldn't. I mean, it's a hard team to try and do that against the Golden State Warriors and the Spurs. Like defensively, they're going to see that weakness and take advantage of it. But I mean, it was a fun game. At least it was close in the end of the fourth quarter. I guess this was this and the Houston game were the closest in terms of like maybe being able to win it. But just at the end of the game, like some bad turnovers and open 3-point shots that the Warriors didn't miss that time. Do you have anything that really stood out to you? This game, for some reason, feels hazy for me, maybe because it was quite late on at night, so maybe I kind of forgot it somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, I was coming back from a journalism conference, which, by the way, the Golden State beat writer Marcus Thompson was there, so it's fun to see him. But just with this game, I mean, because, people talk about the Warriors miss a lot of shots. It's not like Sacramento was draining threes either. I mean,
I guess the difference is Golden State Warriors are known for hitting them.
Yeah, it's just the reason it was close. I mean, it was close, but Kings were missing things too. It wasn't. Yeah. I mean, with this game, Marco started to get things going, and you mentioned that. I mean, let's see. I'm trying to think of anything else because, like as you mentioned, the game's more.
I mean, there was like some. So, like to me, the big play again. It was like, like the dagger of the game was the Seth Curry free from the corner where, I think it was like Harrison Barnes was above the break, open. Rondo left Seth Curry to close out on him, and then you leave Seth Curry with an open free. It's like I would rather Harrison Barnes take an open free than Seth Curry. So it's just stuff like that I find frustrating. Whereas I don't know if that's coaching, or it's just players' instinct to close out on an open free. But there should be like better awareness of like who you want that open free to go to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's leaving Curry. Oh, because you mentioned that came with about 50 seconds left in the fourth quarter. It was still 94 to 88. I mean, game within reach, and then you leave arguably the best 3-point shooter of all time, potentially wide open.
And this was like another frustrating game in terms of lineup. Quincy Acey started with Kufos, James Anderson, Rudy Gay. Quincy Acey was pretty good, and then he started the first 2 minutes of the second half and then never played again. So it's just, again, it's like there's no belief in what the change you've made. But I mean, he had energy. He was like, I like Quincy Acey. He can hit, like he stretches the field from the 4. He can hit those. He can hit threes from above the break. But it's just like, again, it's like no belief in your lineups. I think the Kings missed an opportunity like early in that game where they had they were up. I think it was maybe 12 they were up by, and they just, or maybe they weren't even up by that much. Maybe it was like 5 or 7, but they had an opportunity to and they had good looks, but they didn't take advantage of them. Whilst Golden State Warriors were just missing shots. So they just didn't put the foot on the neck when they had the opportunity to. So I think that was kind of disappointing. And again, it was Kufos against an athletic big in Festus Ezeli. Again, probably a player that Willie Cauley-Stein would have matched up better to. So to me, that's just poor scouting again of who you're playing against. Whereas we had, I guess Willie Cauley-Stein against Draymond Green still kind of a good, that's works as a matchup, whereas maybe Kufos doesn't. Kufos Willie Cauley-Stein played under 20 minutes this game. And I know the Golden State Warriors play small, but he should play more than that, I think. Ben McLemore played well this game as well, I thought, even though it didn't really affect the scoreboard that much. I thought his off-ball defense was good and his activity. So I thought he played well. Only 16 minutes though, and I think Ron Butler came in before him, played 5 minutes with that bench unit, which wasn't very good. So yeah, it's just, and this was another game where it's just scattergun approach to the bench. It's James Anderson played 14 minutes and started. So even though Ben's playing 16 minutes, he's still playing more than the player who has taken his starting role. So it's just interesting kind of. And again, yeah, another starting lineup. Quincy Acey had played 4 minutes before this game and then he was starting. It just seemed weird. Should we move on to the Spurs game then, or is there anything else you wanted to touch on that? I think that game was at least positive to me, where it's oh, okay, they can they were doing smart things defensively, and it was just, and the rotations weren't too bad, in terms of and at least he didn't play the starters that played the game before that were awful.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was signs of competent NBA defense, which hadn't been seen in a few games, so that was nice. But I mean, and this is just a quick tangent. I mean, because a lot of people in Sacramento there's some fans that are freaked out. It's there's good signs here. They're not these big blowouts where there's nothing positive. There's things you can take away from each of these games that give you momentum and hope for the upcoming schedule.
Yeah, and they're all good teams. I mean, it's the Rockets, I guess they're without Dwight Howard and Monty Nunes, Terrence Jones, but I mean, they weren't winning games because Harden wasn't playing well. They probably the Warriors are blowing out teams and they didn't blow out the Kings, so I guess that's kind of good. I think the Kings even covered that game, so that was good. The Spurs game, obviously with Boogie back, that helps a lot, and the Kings played a lot better. But this is I think we've seen you can't play a point guard for 48 minutes and keep it close in the fourth quarter when you have no other ball handler.
Yeah, I mean, it's because San Antonio took advantage of Rondo and Boogie being tired at the end of the game. I mean, if Collison and even Curry are going to be out for a while, you have to sign someone. It could be someone off the street, someone who can just play a few minutes to give Rondo some rest. You ask him to play 45, 48 minutes a game while these guys are out. It's just too much.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I kind of thought about with maybe the inexperience of Vlade Divac, and you keep Duje Dukan as a 15th man, so you don't have that open spot to call up someone in an emergency. Obviously, I don't think they would have, because it sounded like Seth Curry thought he could go, and his ankle wasn't as like warming up, he felt it go again, or like some soreness. So maybe they would have not made a move anyway, thinking that Steph Curry would have been back. But would you have kind of tried to find a spot maybe when like, because I mean Tony Parker isn't playing great, so I mean maybe you could have found a spot where you take Rondo out and rest him just for a little bit. I mean, I think especially in that third quarter where you could see that Rondo was tired, like maybe those last 3 minutes of the third quarter, you just give him a bit of rest where you can you have like the break as well, so you kind of give him that gap either side. It felt like they played Boogie just too long on the first quarter and the second quarter and the third quarter. It felt like they were just pushing it a bit too long with him. But yeah, would you have tried something just again to see if you could survive without Rondo on the floor and just have him a bit fresher for that fourth quarter?
I mean, I've this goes back to something we'll talk about later, but I feel like a smart coach who's just active in the game that's going. I think you have, if you don't have Curry and you don't have Clausen there has to be some period in the game where either planned or just it happens where you have to take Rondo out for a few minutes. You have to take Boogie out because when you mentioned it with Boogie, he played for the first quarter until about a minute left in that. Played a lot in the second quarter. Rondo played the whole. You have to find times during the game where you can rest these guys. Rondo's still I mean, he's more than a year removed now from ACL. Boogie's coming off the Achilles, but you have to find time to get these guys some rest for the fourth quarter. In a game that was close where it's going to be crunch time in that fourth quarter, and it's at home, so you need to do something.
And with Boogie on the floor, I think it's a bit better than in the Golden State Warriors game because you can run offense with him at the high post, and then you just have guys like running and cutting everywhere. So like Boogie is, at least for his position, is a plus ball handler and playmaker. So that's kind of better than having, say, Marco play point guard where he has a point guard defending him, and then that kind of becomes more of an issue. So maybe they could have tried that. I think that would have been my option, as you either have Boogie or I mean you can just like push the ball up quickly, then you get it to Boogie and he initiates offense from the high post with guys cutting around him. And I think that kind of could work offensively for like 3-minute spells and gives like teams trouble. And then we've seen Ben McLemore was defending Tony Parker at spells this game anyway. So you don't have that issue of who's going to defend the point guard because they would, and maybe this was kind of an issue as well. Why Rondo was tired? They were trying to hide him on Danny Green, but the issue with so that to try and like give Rondo a rest, but the problem with that is Danny Green is constantly running and cutting and going behind floppy sets and down screens. So the time he's resting, he's just chasing around the shooter. It's not really great rest. So maybe it would have been better to, but then that's the great thing with the Spurs. You can't hide him on a wing either because that's Kawhi Leonard, and he's looking like one of the best basketball players in the league. I guess this was the worst Rudy Gay game as well. He looked really bad, and Kawhi Leonard like made him look stupid, and just like his closeouts have no energy to them. He's getting lost. He's losing his man a lot, and the perimeter. He's just taking really bad shots, and Rondo took some bad shots as well at the end. I think it was that was that kind of 9-point swing where Tony Parker hit that free over Ben McLemore's head on the last second of the shot clock, and that was a really well defended play. Then Rondo, straight in transition, came down, took a jumper, mid-range jumper, like really early in the shot clock. it bounced off. Then they got an easy bucket in transition. Then I think they took then it was like maybe it was Rudy Gay took a bad shot, and then it was like another transition basket, and then it's like in the space of a minute it was like a 9-point run, and that just kills you. I think there was another instant, maybe that, and maybe it was there was another instant as well. I can't recall exactly when it was, but when Marco had an open free in transition,
Yes.
and he turned it down, then Kawhi Leonard stripped it, and then it was a quick basket as well. So it's just like frustrating like mistakes, and they just happen at the wrong time, and then there's just like a avalanche after.
Yeah, and to me, I was just about to mention that to me that really was the turning point in the game. I mean,
That was in the third quarter, right? Or was it
fourth quarter?
Fourth quarter? Okay.
Yeah, and that he leads to the turnover, and I mean, you could be talking about difference. Yeah, that was big to me. That's the one that even
And
seconds
again,
after
it's
it.
just like it's almost his pump fake, and then he just gets kind of like he just needs to forget about pump faking. I don't know what it is. But Marco had a good game. I liked all the floppy sets where he was like coming off the screens really hard, those down screens, and then getting good shots. I think most of those were in the second quarter where he scored like 10 points. So that was good. I really like that type of offense. I'd like to see them run that for Ben more. But and like Marco like obviously it's not really in Marco's interest to teach Ben how to play well, maybe, but they seem to play on the floor a lot together, and I think they look good together. So if you can run double floppies where you have both bigs setting screens, and then they come up either side, and then whoever's open gets it, that's like really good. You can get really good shots that way. So there's at least some like offensive sets I liked. But yeah, I think this game was like, at least it was close, and the Kings were leading parts of it for like sustained leads for a while, and then it's just the end where Rondo. To me, it's just like Rondo was dead, and it's like you can't really do much after that when you just have one person on the court that literally can't play anymore. Not to his own fault, like just fatigue. Like that's kind of an issue. Maybe because he hit like 4 of 4 to start the game, then didn't hit a shot after that. And so maybe that's why he took like some jumpers as well that maybe normally he wouldn't, because he hit those early ones. But him and Willie Cauley-Stein, I thought they looked good that game with like the weak side lobs. That was fun. But Willie Cauley-Stein played 22 minutes. It's just crazy how you can be playing so well, and yeah, it's just frustrating. Ben McLemore played 12 minutes, but he scored 7 points, and like James Anderson played 7 minutes to start the game, didn't score anything, had a really bad game, never played again. But it's like I don't understand why they're not playing Ben McLemore more, because I think he was really playing badly those first 4 games, but I think he's really playing pretty well now. I think like Kings fans don't like him just because like the expectation of a lottery pick. But if you just think of him as like an average shooting guard, like then I think he's an average shooting guard. He's better than James Anderson. I'd rather him play 21 minutes than James Anderson play 7 minutes and Ben play 12. And like it's not close.
Yeah. And just with Willie Cauley-Stein, I mean, he exited the game. Game was 86-78. A close game, still 7 minutes left in the game. He came back in when Spurs were up 20. So, I mean, just...
It's frustrating, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's where a lot of his fourth quarter minutes are coming, is garbage time.
Kufos didn't have a bad game, but it was Rudy Gay playing the 4. I know. I guess he was he. I know they were always playing. So who? Oh, it was Caspi. Wait, let me see. So when when he went out, yeah, there was a time where it was Caspi and Gay on the floor, and so they were -4 that one. Then when Kufos came on, they were -8, so that was the worst run with Kufos in. Before that, they'd been plus with Kufos in. So to be fair, like before that, they were kind of fine with Kufos playing, and I thought he played one of his better games.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been really impressed with Kufos. It's just been like finishing through contact. He struggled with a little bit. But then again, it's like they keep changing who he's playing with. So this opening lineup was Rondo, James Anderson, Gay, Willie Cauley-Stein, Cousins. So it's like every game it's a different starting lineup. I think the Kings have had the lineup they've had played the most is 22 minutes. There's other teams that lineups have played over 100 minutes by now, and partly that's down to Cousins being out, but to not have a lineup that's played more than 22 minutes is just ridiculous.
I mean, hopefully that improves with injury, but just please, George Karl, lineup consistency, minute consistency, rotation consistency, something.
Should we move on to the kind of controversy then? So after this game, Boogie's comments, they were kind of like Ty Corbin era type comments. That was kind of how I felt.
It was. Yeah, so let me just actually. You want to recap real quick? I need to let my dog outside.
Okay. So Boogie just basically said that there's issues, but they're not with the players. They're not on the court issues. So basically, just without saying it's a coaching issue, saying it's a coaching issue. And then then he said they were going to have a players only meeting, and then it ended up being a players and coach and Vlade Divac meeting, which I think only Vlade and Karan Butler have come out and spoke, and Caspi as well, kind of saying like positive thoughts about the meeting they had. And so the players were, I think Rudiger even had comments after that weren't on video, but someone, I think it was Hoops Hype or Aileen from the Sac B, I saw like quoted on Hoops Hype saying that Gay was basically questioning the offensive and defensive scheme. So I assume that was kind of the players' side of it, and then the reports after the meeting is the coaches were about talking about kind of how players are, their mentality and their, I'll try and find the exact quote, but kind of like along the lines of like their work ethic and stuff like that. That'll be interesting. Kind of, I guess we'll probably see tomorrow what, if there's kind of any impact on what's happened. I wouldn't be surprised if like the players are annoyed just about how often things are being mixed up. So maybe we see Ben McLemore back in the starting lineup and Willie Cauley-Stein, and that's like the unit that always starts. I wouldn't be surprised at that. Partly because like the way in which like I thought it was really, we didn't note on this, but like when Ben had that kind of tough part of the game, he got benched, and then like Boogie called him over to sit next to him, and they were like having a heart-to-heart talk. So I think like Gay seems to be really close with McLemore as well. So maybe they think like the way in which McLemore's been treated just for like having a bad couple of games was uncalled for and isn't helping the team. So maybe that will be something that changes. So we'll see, but so I'll try and find. I can't find the quote about what the coaches wanted, but I think it was something about like the players' attitude and
yeah. And I believe part of that was Karl saying, that players weren't exactly listening to him during the game.
Okay, well that's quite interesting. Partly because like before, he's always said that he wants players to play, and like the issues of the first game was that first half of the first game was they were calling too many plays and it got really bogged down and slow. So maybe they just need to find a balance in between. And then I guess some things could get lost in translation. Like there was something where like Carl was saying how with Boogie out, then obviously Gay is the number one shooting option. And then so when you maybe tell a player that, then like Gay asks for it in isolation in clear out situations and you get bad shots. And maybe that, like maybe being the number one option means something different to Rudy Gay than it does to George Karl. So it could just be like poor communication in some parts.
Yeah. And you know, just a lot. I mean, one thing I do want to get your thoughts on, just something that, you know, watching the game sometimes, just thoughts that I think about. It seems like at times that Karl's not fully into it. Like on the bench, he sits there just, I don't know, he's not fully attentive of being, I'm trying to think of how to describe it perfectly, but he doesn't seem fully into it.
So this is something on, I think it was the second of like the King's mini documentary thing. Karl said about how since having cancer, he's had to be less of a dictator and have more of a, like, let his assistants work. So he has one assistant that does kind of all the yelling. You will see Karl like jump up, and I think he got upset about some calls in the last game. Obviously, he had like a technical last year, or a couple of technicals last year. So I think there's sometimes when he loses call, but he obviously can't shout much because of having throat cancer. So I think that's kind of more of like an image thing than he's not into it. Some of his comments, he does kind of like distance himself from the team though. So I can kind of understand like that kind of thought that he doesn't seem like one with the players or like taking full responsibility. Even after the Spurs loss, he was like saying how like the players will be feeling angry and confused. And so that's just kind of like, well, why? Surely you should be kind of trying to help that a bit. So I think maybe he doesn't feel part of the team as much as I guess like Malone was, and that's kind of where he was like the life and soul of the team, and like really emotionally invested and weared his heart on the sleeve. So maybe like that's harder for a player that like Boogie, who's like emotionally in the game. And I guess like you could say that with like the team just doesn't have a heart without Boogie on the floor. Just like they die so quickly or they come out so slow. It's really rare for the Kings to come out slow when Boogie's playing, just because like if they come out slow, then he's angry, and like at least there's like some emotion and like spirit with him, which is kind of disappointing that like that can't be made up for. I think Collison can to a certain point, and that's kind of like energy and like tempo he makes up for it. So yeah, is there anything else on like the kind of drama stuff? It sounds like at least it's kind of like Carmichael Dave had some comment where it's like the next 48 hours are crucial. It sounds kind of less like that now.
Yeah. So yeah, this morning Carmichael Dave said the next 48 hours will be very telling about what's going to happen with. I mean, he seemed to indicate coaching situation. He also said last night someone was asking about George Karl if you expect him to be back next year. He said he would be surprised if Karl's back with his team. So you have those two comments. I mean, and then just one thing I do want to address: living in Sacramento, spending some time on Sacramento Kings forum and just on Twitter. Kings fans are, as I told you, I wouldn't want to be on a cruise ship with them, because as soon as the captain even says that there's a plumbing problem, they're jumping off ship. The Kings' schedule has been brutal. DeMarcus Cousins has been out for 4.5 games. Darren Collison has been out for a while. But if you told me that those two players were going to be out for a significant time with that schedule, yeah, 1 or 2 wins, that was probably expected because still some new players needs time to adjust. The lineups being thrown together every different which way, every different game. So yeah, considering those circumstances, this is to be expected. But there's still a lot of reason to be hopeful about the team if these remain healthy with the bench, with Cousins, Collison. Rudy Gay will improve. I think being a new father and the time that's gone into that, not getting as much sleep. I think that's played a role. But you just put everything together. Hopefully, Willie Cauley-Stein gets minutes. Put all those things together is still a reason to be optimistic. And finally, to quote Aaron Rodgers, RELAX.
I guess like having no back-to-backs helps. Going on kind of like a little East run now of teams helps. Although the next team's the Pistons, who look really good. Probably the second best team in the East at the moment. So I think like that break, not having back-to-backs will kind of help Boogie and Rondo if Rondo's playing kind of extended minutes. So that kind of all helps. I guess like we thought they could maybe win 2 games. I think if they had played like they played against the Spurs and the Warriors, they'd probably win the Grizzlies and the Suns games. So that maybe changes stuff. But when you're talking about, okay, they had like a really rough run now, well, that means they hit a spell where they play like some easier games. So we're going to kind of see that coming up next. I mean, the game after the Pistons is the Nets, and they're probably the worst team. It's up between them and the Lakers, who are the worst team. I think the Lakers beat them, so they're at least going to win one of the next 2 games, if not both. So I don't think we've seen, although Drummond's been dominating, I don't think we've seen him against kind of the talent of DeMarcus Cousins. And so I think like the game plan should be to like take Drummond out of the game, where if that's penalty, like get him in the foul trouble, or like you can hack Drummond as well. So that would be
the thing.
I'd really like to
turn it into what you did with DeAndre Jordan. Hack him.
They did that really late though. They did that like the last minute of that game, or the last minute whilst it's legal to, and then a couple of seconds too late. But yeah, I think if Drummond's like going off, you like hack him, get him off the floor, and then like the Pistons are a lot less deadly. Marcus Morris hasn't been as good the last couple of games that he was early on. The Raptors, and then they see the Raptors. So those are like the 3 games. I don't think we really need to talk about the Nets. That should be a pretty easy win. So the Pistons, like this will be interesting if we might see like some change in defensive mantra, because they're playing that like 1 in, 4 out style where it's just shooters everywhere. So maybe a team where the Kings go small, play Rudy at the 4 on Ursa and Ilyasova, and maybe we see kind of like less help in the middle. Although with the way Drummond's playing, maybe you want to help Boogie off one of those shooters, but then you're obviously giving up open shots. So it'll just be interesting how they kind of game plan to that. Obviously the pick and roll as well, how they defend that pick and roll with who's there, what's his name again, the old is it Reggie something, the old Thunder guard that the Pistons have.
Reggie Jackson?
Yeah, Reggie Jackson and Drummond pick and roll is pretty good. So how they defend that will be interesting. Whether they switch it, maybe Willie Cauley-Stein they switch it the whole time. But with DeMarcus, whether they like, to me, I think you probably drop when you play that pick and roll with DeMarcus. You maybe drop it, so you have DeMarcus like stay in the paint more. And not come out, but with Willie Cauley-Stein, and I do the same with Kufos, but then with Willie Cauley-Stein, you can come up, either blitz it or you switch it. because we even saw yesterday Willie switch onto Tony Parker and do a pretty good job. Obviously, Reggie Jackson's a bit more explosive than like not as crafty a player. So that'll be kind of interesting, just how they play that pick and roll. Have you got any thoughts to the Pistons game?
I think, watching DeAndre. Damn it.
Andre Drummond. Yeah, they're pretty similar players.
Well, no, I said that because I was reading someone's tweet where they accidentally typed it. So, anyways, watching Andre Drummond will be fun. I think I want to see him fouled. As you mentioned, they didn't do that soon enough to DeAndre Jordan. So if we see that, I feel like that's one. You look at the schedule; these are winnable games coming up. We're early into the season, so really, Pistons, Nets, Raptors. Those are the next three before we're back on. But just have faith. Those are going to be some games where the Kings will contend in those games and can win.
So should we make and then like the Hawks have been interesting. They were down a load. I know. I guess that's looking a bit too far ahead. Okay, we won't go to the Hawks. The Raptors have been playing really well though. So they were playing like East teams were playing probably the second and third best East team. I think the Raptors have. Are they unbeaten or did they drop a game recently? So look. They've looked good. Kyle Lowry looks really good the way he's playing at the moment.
Raptors are 5-2.
5-2. So they must have dropped their last two games then. Oh yeah, they lost the other day to the Heat as well, by quite a lot. So that's interesting. And to the Magic, who we play pretty soon as well. So it'll be interesting. So maybe the news car smell is worn off the Raptors, but Kyle Lowry looks good. Obviously, Rudy Gay will have some vented interest in winning that game. So that'd be kind of interesting. So I guess what's your prediction for this next week?
You know what? I'm going to say it. I'm going to say their Kings are going to go 3-0.
That's not too crazy. Just like home games, they're obviously going to be like pretty pumped now, or Eastern Conference teams. So that I think they're all on East trips as well, and kind of in the middle of their East trip. So that kind of plays into the Kings' hand slightly.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I think the Raptors are playing the Knicks today, then the 76ers tomorrow. So they're going to be 8-2. Although the Knicks look pretty good. And then the Pelicans, so they'll be 9-2. So if you want to worry about the Kings, go look at the Pelicans. They've had Anthony Davis the whole time and have not won a game. So it could be worse. They're almost kind of like the opposite. They're almost like the opposite of the Kings though, whereas like the Kings have not had the star and everyone else around. The Pelicans had no one around but the star. I'm going to go 2-1. I just think they'll drop one of the Raptors or Pistons games. Obviously, it would probably be better if they don't win the Raptors game, just for kind of like the emotional. Like if they lose against the Pistons, that might be a bit like pretty hard. Worst case scenario, and they lose 2 games out of 1, or let's say they lose all 3. Does George Karl survive that? And do we see like the first female NBA head coach?
Oh man, I want to say he survives, but
if they lose all 3,
this organization has a very short temper.
I guess the issue would be they've got like a away trip coming after those 3 games. But then maybe you don't want to fire someone at the beginning of an East Coast away trip. So it's Hawks, Heat, Magic, Hornets, Bucks. So that would maybe be what would stop you from firing him then.
Yeah, I would say if it's going to happen, let's say it does, and just the whole road trip goes poorly. along with the 3 games this week. I mean, maybe Thursday, November 26th, which is an off day. And like last year, it'll be waking up or seeing a text message at night that the Kings coach has been fired. And then, yeah, Timberwolves at home, at Golden State, and then more home games. So that seems like the time if they were going to do with it.
Do you think Carl has been kind of like emasculated somewhat that his team's played so badly when the player that he wanted to trade was out? Because I don't think he necessarily like definitely wanted to trade Boogie, but I think he wanted to like see if there was something he could get for it. And so like I think the best way of saying it is like the way in which Pete D'Alessandro knew he could keep his job was getting DeMarcus Cousins out once he hired George Karl. So I think that's kind of the real reason why there was trade rumors. But obviously, like it sounds like Karl was like entertaining trade offers, or at least in theory. So do you think like Karl almost feels like he's a worse coach for not being able to win, whilst the player that he kind of said that no one's untradeable, and then his team is not won an NBA game. I don't think the Lakers are an NBA team really.
I mean, I would summarize as I think he did play a pretty sizable role in trying to see if he could trade Cousins and just start with his own identity for the team. And once he found out that DeMarcus Cousins has more power than you, and the ownership backed Cousins, and then we get to the season, as you mentioned, once Kings didn't have Cousins for a few games, the team really struggled. I think, as you said, he's losing a lot of power. That can't be a good feeling.
Yeah, because if he were able to win like 2 or 3 games without DeMarcus Cousins, then he gets like a swing in his direction of like, okay, we can like the coaching, the other talent is good enough, but it's pretty evident that it's like they need DeMarcus or like there's just nothing there.
Yeah. And I'll just throw this out to you.
I thought it would be
Karl
better than that.
is 13 games shy of becoming the 5th winningest coach in NBA history. Is he going to reach that mark with the Kings?
I think he does. I don't just because of the way the schedule runs out and like having all these East teams. Shall we just do like a bigger picture projection then up until the Timberwolves game? So I guess that would be kind of like, and then we see the Warriors again. So let's go up until the Warriors game. How many wins do you think there are in there? So I think it's 10 games. What's your win total coming out? So what, they 7-1 now, 6-1, 6-1?
Yeah.
So after those 10 games, where do you have them? And I'll do my maths as well.
And you said until Timberwolves game, so let's see, 5 wins. So, because there's that road trip. So you always wonder about the road games. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with 6.
Okay. So I think they'll beat the Bucks. Don't look good, so I think they'll beat them. I think they can beat the Hornets just with their size. The Magic haven't been playing down the stretch that well, so I think they'll beat them. So that's 3. Timberwolves, they're just a young team. They're playing really well, but maybe they'll be like a bit hurt by that time. They always seem to get hurt. So I'll make that 5. I think they'll beat the Heat. I don't think they'll beat the Hawks. The Heat are just like a weird team to me. So I will go. So that's already 5. So I'm going to go 7 wins with Nets and Pistons. I think they drop to Raptors, Hawks, and then the Warriors. So then that will make them what, 8 and 10?
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
So that's not too bad. So you get to 8 and 10, or
Yeah,
8
I
and
think I'd make it 7 if
7 and 8.
Vucevic is out for Orlando on that game during that game.
I think they're better when Vucevic is out defensively. So I kind of want Vucevic to be playing if I were the Kings, just because then Boogie can completely destroy him and you can drive to the basket better. Deadman's a bit better defensively, and it helps them a lot more. I just think they're a young team, and like they're still like looking for answers as to like who finishes games. And Evan Fournier can't play this well forever, so hopefully in a couple of weeks he won't be.
I can't wait to see Scott Skiles yelling at people. That's gonna be fun.
He's been really interesting. Those first couple of games, he was playing like the worst defensive front court you could possibly have. So maybe it was just to like have tape of like, okay, so this is why we can't play you anymore in the clutch, because look how terrible you are.
That's what I think. I'm trying to remember what game it was. We were talking about the last podcast where, because they allowed Russell Westbrook to hit that shot, send it to overtime, and he described their fourth quarter, that last sequence, as completely unprofessional. They showed no character. They just trashing everything about them.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So we were pretty off in our last prediction. I think we had 2-2 going 500. So hopefully we're a bit closer this time.
We didn't know Boogie was going to be out the entire time, though.
No, and then Collison being out the last 2 games. And it's mad how like Seth Curry from never playing to being kind of like a crucial inactive the last 2 games as well.
Yeah.
So is it interesting how like quickly someone can become a key component just in terms of depth? So that's kind of a worry, and maybe that kind of just alludes to like the lack of like natural ball handling and playmaking on the team.
Yeah.
So I think that's somewhere they've since losing. Yeah, they've just never really had much of that. Was there anything you wanted to finish on?
Just on the fun note, the Lakers will be without Kobe Bryant tonight, which means Metta World Peace is starting.
Oh, they should be pretty good then.
Yeah.
They might actually get another win. So I wonder if they're just because that's almost like an anti-tank move for them, because they've got to try and I think their picks top 3 protected, so they should really be trying to play Kobe as much as possible so they can keep their draft pick.
We'll have to talk about Kobe one day when the Kings play the Lakers again. There's so much.
Yeah. Do you think the Kings go 4-0 against the Lakers this year? They went 3-1 last year.
Yes.
Okay. I hope so. If they lose to them, that would be miserable. And Mavericks Pelicans, that should be a good game. I was maybe a bit off on the Mavericks. I thought they'd be worse than they are. They have been pretty bad at times, but I think we have them just after when December starts, I believe so. At least like the Western Conference is a lot worse, especially with the Pelicans being so bad. So maybe they're like the Thunder of last year in terms of like just losing at the beginning of the year, because they're not like the Kings and losing to good teams. They're losing to bad teams as well.
Yep. Yeah. So I think, is there anything else we want to cover today?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything, all our frustrations and hope.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to describe it, is frustrated and hopeful.
And Kings fans, just remember, please relax. Just calm down. Don't jump off the ship yet. It hasn't even left the station yet. Just wait. Five games. 10 games, please. That's all I ask of you.
Yeah, I think we'll have like a better picture by December, the beginning of December. We'll kind of know by then. And it's nice Coron Butler's being kind of like so vocal about this and like kind of being the voice of reason. So that's kind of like promising. I don't think we really had a player like that last year.
He's going to be our coach/player when Carl's fired.
I think it's going to be Nancy Lieberman. She could have played the point yesterday.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Maybe we should have done that.
Someone.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that is going to wrap it up for the Sac Off podcast. Once again, we're coming to you every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, wherever that time is in your time zone. I'm not sure, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. You can always check out the podcast on YouTube. And yeah, so just want to thank everyone for checking us out. As always, love talking about Sacramento Kings with my good friend Oscar Hazel at Oscar Hazel on the Twitter machine. This is me at Matt J on NFL, Matt J _ on NFL, signing off and wishing you all a very farewell.